just lost track of time. Sometimes you just, when you want to understand a sector,
it's
you
intriguing,
realize
the sector.
it's very interesting. See, the sector where you cannot imagine that suddenly because of one rainfall, I never thought power demand would come back.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was such an ignored sector as a whole. Also.
It is a sector which was used to be called the ugly duckling sector. Nobody liked it, nobody owned it. But when I was looking at data and brokerage reports in the morning, the gap between the demand and the production right now is at a peak. And we've never seen this kind of a situation, at least in India. Or I should start saying Bharat now.
Bharat.
But okay, back to markets. Back to Indian markets.
Yes.
I think that, see, what can you make on the trend, what we've seen in last couple of days? It is simple that the bias suddenly from the drift lower has become a positive bias. And that has happened at a time when Bank Nifty has not chipped in. Global markets have been slightly puffy-duffy. Not that markets have taken a giant leap forward, but from a situation of one step back, one step forward, one step forward, one step back, it seems to be slightly different, which is now you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Now, what it means is that if you get a little bit of global push, little bit of global, little bit of support from liquidity, the market, can it really go and retest the previous zone of resistance? And that, frankly, cannot be ruled out. While we may continue to raise the red flag when it comes to individual stocks in the small and the mid cap index, the market direction in this week, and especially in last 3 days, is clearly telling you that the bearish narrative is not making money. Even best of the bulls are surprised with the market momentum, but the market is in no mood to relent, and that is what we must embrace, and that is what we need to bring, that is what you need to bring out. For me, a total market would be when banks chip in. I think banks are getting ready they're getting ready to come out from their, I'm not use the word, but they're ready to come back from their quarantine. I think it's been a long quarantine.
Hibernation, let's say that.
So they are ready to come out from that. And that, I think, really would be the final hurrah, so to speak. So I don't think for the year the final hurrah in large cap stocks is done. This week there is more positive than negative. The global cues exactly are not strong and supportive, but right now that's not having a rub-off effect.
Yeah. But the question, of course, is then where are the shorts in the market, right? Given the recovery that you've seen from the recent lows, which on the index, like I mentioned, has been a good 350 points. Yesterday as well, you saw, a good 100-point recovery coming in from the lows of the day. And it's names like PNB, ICICI Bank, Axis Bank, and going down the barrel, it's a Shriram Finance, Apollo Tyres, Dixon Technologies, L&T Tech, etc.
So logically, I think banks should see a bout of short covering if the market momentum continue, because you cannot have like a market moving higher and banks not chipping in. Bank by force, the banking bears by force, they would be forced to cover their short positions. That's how index always has moved in the past. The cause for underperformance, I think, for banks are two. One, ownership. Everybody owns it, everybody likes it. Whatever could go right has gone wrong for banks. Now that is not the situation. Looking at the data on inflation, looking at the data what is coming on the global front, the fact where the dollar index is, how the currency is moved, there is a bit of a macro ripple. So there is suddenly a fly in the ointment, which is inflation. And the dynamic assumptions for the second half of this year now are changed. But I still feel that retail facing franchise will outperform. The festival season indications are not looking bad at all. So my sense is that banks are getting ready. You may see a bout of short covering there. Valuations are not looking all that stretched, and what had become like an over-owned, over-discussed, over-loved, over-adored sector, I guess some degree of semblance there has also come back.
Okay, Nikunj, let's talk about what kept you out in the newsroom for quite some time. You were talking about those interesting takeaways on the entire power space. So if you'd just like to revisit that, talking about the kind of peak demand that we're seeing in August.
Okay, so let's simplify it for our viewers. One is the impact, and second is individual stocks. What has happened is, because August was a very dry month this time because of delayed monsoon, and the air conditioning penetration, our comfort which we require in terms of electricity demand, all that is increasing. As a result, in the month of August, the electricity demand has shot up, and there seems to be a mismatch in what the total installed capacity is versus what the sudden demand is. Now the sudden demand could be erratic, and that may not sustain. And now that things are normalizing on the weather front, the demand will come down. But meanwhile, when you see such a large uptick in demand, what happens? Indian power sector, Avan and Aisha, I'm going to simplify it, try and simplify it for viewers. Hope I'm able to do that. You have utilities, NTPC, Tata Power, Adani, they generate power. They're power utilities. They sell by two routes. One is PPP, which is that you've entered into a long-term agreement with the buyer, and that is a fixed contract many years. And 75 to 80% of the broad capacity in India is locked in that. Remaining is what is called as you can sell in the open market. That is what you use, that is called as merchant power. Now the demand has gone higher. You cannot change the price at which long-term contracts have done, but you will definitely get an advantage in terms of merchant power pricing. So companies which have a high exposure to merchant power pricing are the ones they will hit a jackpot. Why will they hit a jackpot? Because your realizations will just go multifold. Your cost of production is same, your realizations they go higher. What happens? You make more money. So the theme to buy, I think for next couple of days would be companies which have a high exposure to merchant power. And I think that is a theme which I think could be a warm theme, could be a charged up theme. Some stocks have run up, but looking at the way our trend is moving, I think we are in for a bumper quarter for companies which have a high exposure to merchant power.